Welcome back to Humanology on Air. It's good to be here. My name is Jeeves, and today I am joined by co-host and friend of the show, Shannon Ballard. Say hello, Shannon.
Hello.
So today we're talking about the value of B2B brand work, value proposition work, all the strategy that goes into it. And why would you say that we're talking about this today?
So Jan Kelley's been around for over 110 years. This is a core offering of what we do and how we service clients in the B2B space. But it's something we don't talk about a lot. And it always amazes me. We're always working with clients in this space. And every time we go through this process, we come out on the other side and people are, this was so great. This was so surprising. I had no idea the power of branding. I had no idea the power of a purpose brand, or really clearly articulating our positioning and our differentiation, or really understanding who our customers are, or really leaning into our values and how to operationalize them. And so I thought it would be fun for us to talk about that and talk about the confusion in the space and maybe what's holding people back from doing it, and why people aren't doing it.
Yeah.
Why aren't more B2B brands realizing the power of this?
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, we do this a lot. And so you might think, you have a vested interest in this. That's why we invited two really special guests, Lisa MacNeil, Scott Dunlop. I will let you introduce them. I know they're very good friends of yours.
Yeah, so this was fun because we wanted to think about people who've been through the brand process, not right now. We wanted to find people that have done it a few years ago so that we could really talk to them about what are you seeing and was it worth it? And what surprised you about the process. So Scott Dunlop, coolest company ever, Pyrotek, global special effects company. You name it. They've got the fire, they've got the lasers, they've got the wind, they've got the smoke. Any concert that's on tour right now, Taylor Swift, they are there and they are working to bring that concert experience alive. So we worked with them many years ago, and it was fun to revisit that work and talk about the impact that's had. And then on the other side, we have Lisa MacNeil, former president of Gordon Food Service, now president of Tree of Life, food and beverage distributors, and really a complicated business. And so how do you, with many stakeholders, so what is the power of branding, brand strategy, value proposition design when you have such a complicated business?
Yeah, for sure. We get into a lot of stuff. We get to hear how they're doing, how the work is working for them. And we will not keep you waiting anymore. Let's jump right into the interview. Thank you for joining us today. It's so nice to have y'all here, and we are talking about B2B brand work. And I just want to start by asking really quite simply, I know you're in very different industries. What does your industry at a high level think of brand work? We'll start with you, Lisa.
I would say historically speaking, my industry didn't really know what branding was. Right? And specifically branding of an organization. We knew how to distribute products, get a case from A to B, but not necessarily how to describe to other people what we did. And that's really what branding is. And so I would say we didn't really know, and now we do.
Scott, what about your industry?
Well, being the music business, I'd say there's a couple of constituencies. So one, I would call, or Shannon and I would call, the old guard. So these are guys that started their careers probably pushing boxes around for Led Zeppelin. And if you went to them and said, hey, what do you think of branding? It's rock and roll, so it's there's an element to it. Okay, we're about sticking it to the man. They'd say it's all a bunch of corporate bullshit. On the other end of the spectrum, over the years, the business has gotten a lot more professionalized. The money that kind of flows down the food chain is controlled by some pretty large public companies. And a lot of the professional designers and promoters who operate in that space would understand that in reality, they're looking for, companies with reputation, a track record, and a value proposition that they can understand going in, which is really what branding's all about. And what we've found is being able to kind of message that out in a way that people can get it has been really helpful.
I think that's great. I think about when I started with Tree of Life, one of the questions that I would get from my board, from employees, even from retailers, even from brands that we represented and distributed was like, we don't really understand who you are and what you do. And that took us on a total journey.
Yeah.
To be able to describe that, including like, what is our value proposition? Who are we? What is it we do? And how do we add value to both the customers and the brands that we represent?
And how do you do it in a simple way that you can explain it easily, quickly, and get all of the stakeholders involved in your organization?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can easily now say that at Tree of Life, we're curators of unique brands bringing elevated food and beverage experiences to Canadians. Like, that resonates, right? People understand what that is. Our tagline today is a tasteful collection. Oh, what does that mean, Lisa? Well, it's self-explanatory. If you're a brand that we represent, you're part of a tasteful collection. If you're a retailer that we sell to, we offer you a tasteful collection for your shelves. And if you're an employee that works for Tree of Life, we have a tasteful collection of folks that have different skills, competencies, and backgrounds that all work together.
It makes my heart so happy to hear you be able to say that in such an articulate way, because it's not simple to get there.
Yeah,
it's
was a journey.
Process. It's a journey, and it involves research, and it involves digging in. It involves making decisions. It involves really being okay with making some strategic decisions about what you are and what you aren't. And then once you're comfortable with that process and you trust the process, that's where you can get to that really pointy place.
And as a result of that, it resonates. We're picking up business, and people know who we are and what we do. And instead of us chasing business, it's, they're knocking on the door. It's been incredible.
So this is where you are today. But years ago, before you started this, when you might have thought it was bullshit, I assume there was some resistance to this marketing work. Was it Shannon that sold you?
I knew I needed help. I didn't know what I needed done, and Shannon said, I can help you on this journey. And but talking about resistance, one of the folks that was originally on my team, when Shannon talked about research, said, I know our clients love us, and so do our retail partners, and we don't need research. We know who we are. And I was like, no, Shannon's told me the most important part is to make sure you follow the process and do the research. And as a part of that research, we uncovered things that had us changing the structure of the organization and putting, different strategies in place so that we could move the business forward, so that we're actually, doing the things that our brands are looking for us to do.
It's interesting because one part of the process that's very important is finding that one version of the truth.
Yeah.
So not taking your own internal opinions, not taking the loudest person in the room's opinion, but actually really looking at your customers, looking at your stakeholders, and understanding everyone's viewpoint so that you can find that starting point. And there are times we've gone through this brand process, this value proposition design workshop, and we have to stop and say, so based on our research, you're not doing anything different than anyone else in your industry.
That's
so
what you told me.
We need to have some tough conversations. But then that freedom to actually lean into that, it can be quite great.
Yeah, I think the comment was around, hey, you're not really doing anything different, but that really means there's a lot of opportunity to differentiate yourself and lift yourself, above your competitors. That's how I took it anyways. Opportunity.
So to do that, to find the one version of the truth, that takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of stakeholders to actually get in one room and decide, or agree, yeah, we're maybe not differentiating ourselves as well as we could be, but then how do we do that and what do we land on? Scott, how did you sell that through that time and the resources and the effort to your team?
It'll surprise you, but it was, this kind of happened in the context of we'd already decided we needed to retool our whole strategic plan, and we'd done that. It was pretty operationally focused, and on the way through, what really kind of became clear was there was a bit of a cultural shift that needed to take place in the group in order to execute that, and they realized that too. So, you know, when we came to them and decided and said, look, we're going to actually rebrand the company, do a whole new corporate identity, and redefine what are our values, where are we trying to go, they got it immediately and were pretty receptive to doing it. So it was all about the context that made it easy.
Nice. And what about your team?
I would say similar. Similar, you know, I was new coming in and trying to figure out what was this organization that, you know, that I joined. I knew they had wonderful products, great people, but really taking you know, creating a go forward strategy and the branding around that. And I would say that there was a lot of folks that came onto the project that understood that we needed a refresh. And so I think there was quite a bit of receptivity to moving forward with the project overall. Like I said earlier, though, we didn't know where we were going to end up. So it was a journey, and I think there was a little bit of uncertainty at times, but it all worked out well in the end.
It is a weird journey, is brand work. Like, you get these activities that are like, if your brand was a city, what
Or
city?
a celebrity.
What city would it be?
Yeah.
Did you have people on your team being like, what is this?
I think they saw it as actually a bit of fun
Yeah.
as well, right? I think, you know, as folks were coming into the meetings, you would send this information and people would answer the questions, you'd bring us together and we would go through it. And over time, they started to see the story unfold. So in the beginning, I'd say, yeah, it was like, oh, this is weird, but it's fun. So let's try it. And as we move forward, the story unfolded and people started to get it.
Yeah, we had the same experience. I mean, a lot of the trouble was, you know, this was occurring in a environment where, you know, there were a few members of the old management team exiting stage left, and we were using that as an opportunity to kind of re-engage everybody. Under that old environment, they didn't really have a lot of say in stuff. So the fact that we were now coming to them and saying, okay, look, we're going to redefine all of our values and identity, new logo, new tagline, and everything. Like, they were happy to participate in the process because they weren't used to, you know, having their input solicited.
That's
Good
fair.
point.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, when we first started out, we actually weren't going to do a refresh on the values. And we ended, as we started along the journey, realizing that was every bit as important as all the previous steps. And we did. We redefined our values.
I think that was an interesting one because a lot of time companies have values where they say, we're going to be innovative, we're going to be collaborative. But then when, as a leader, you start to look at that, you say, well, how do I measure that? And how do I operationalize that? So we like to talk about it less as values and more as behaviors we owe each other. So in order for us to actually reach our vision and where we want to go, what are the behaviors we owe each other, which really are values, but it's a much easier way to wrap your head around actioning those. And then how do you start to tie those into performance reviews and strategic plans and the day-to-day way that you live your brand? And I think that's where the magic happens, because a brand cannot live with the owners, the C-suite, the leadership team. It really has to live across the entire organization. And I get so much joy when years later now we've done this work and I'm seeing it day to day on your socials come to life. And I think that clarity for everyone in the organization, when someone can take it and run with it, is where it gets exciting.
The social media strategy, I don't even know what that was. But yeah, that was amazing. It's really, yeah, our social media is amazing. I never really thought about, you need to have a certain look and a certain feel and how you're, consistency. And we get a lot of great comments on our social media today. Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So at a high level, was the work that, you wouldn't know what each of you did, but you would know. the high-level activities that your groups went through in the brand work process. Yeah, I should probably just ask you one by one. I'll start with you, Lisa. What kinds of activities did you do?
Well, you're asking me to go back a little bit, but I still remember them. The research, for sure, right? We had, Jan Kelley did interviews with brokers, with retailers, with suppliers and internal to find out, did a whole, I still have the competitive analysis that you did from an online perspective. We took people through, what's your favorite celebrity, city, right? Archetypes, right? What is an archetype? I had no idea, right? Oh, what is your personality tree of life? Oh, that's interesting, right? So taking everybody through that process and then figuring out what our tagline is. I do remember that, right? All of the discussion on the tagline, and then taking our marketing, our communications manager through the social media strategy and training, and still utilizing that today. And then that led to, I remember we did an internal launch, we did an external launch, and then we moved into redoing our website. And I can honestly say, I met a brand at a trade show, and that I was interested in us potentially representing, and he sent me an email and said, hey, I was on your website, and based on what I see, you would be the type of organization that I would want to represent our brand. And I thought, wow, that's powerful, right? That the actual website is going to help us, pick up multi-millions of dollars in new business.
Very well answered. Scott, do you remember? It's been a bit
Been
further
a while.
back for you.
Well,
eh?
here, I'll make an attempt to remember it. If I miss anything that's key, you can kick me under the table. So yeah, we did a lot of surveying or like client interviews. We did internal interviews with employees. A whole bunch of like workshops on corporate ID and logo and tagline, like a whole bunch of those. I remembered we did like a kind of final launch day here in this building.
Yeah.
Right, with a party on the patio and all of that kind of stuff. I think we did a phase where we, all those clients who talked to us on the way through, we came up with some really nice high-end branded merchandise and sent it to them as a thank you. And the coolest thing of all, actually, remember we filmed that launch day, and I cut it up into sort of like a video.
Training videos.
And then I actually went out on the road. We did like these road shows, because some of our personnel, they'll travel with the show, so they're never in one place for very long. So we actually went like city by city to try to grab these people as an audience, sit down with them backstage with a laptop, and we did the launch, so they were invested in it.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
nice.
So it was
And
it was pretty.
one of those training sessions,
Yep.
Taylor Swift. It was
Yeah.
before a Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah, actually,
Oh.
probably the largest group, that would have been the Red Tour. And,
okay.
yeah, we basically sat backstage at the Rogers Center with a group of 8 of them and walked them through, okay, here's where that logo came from, here's what it means, et cetera, et cetera. And believe it or not, they paid attention the whole time.
That's pretty cool.
One thing that we did with your group is we brought our team to your facility. And we had our writer and we had our research team, and I was there. And they used the effect that you had just had for the Justin Timberlake concert, I think. And it was the fire that was so hot.
Yeah.
And they showed us how it worked. And it was so overwhelming. My blood was pumping. And that really helped us understand that experience of standing there and what that felt like. And I really do feel like that was the precipice of us really being able to understand the idea of bringing live alive, because we met
It's
with
a
people.
visceral thing.
It's a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
And, you can go to a concert and you can sit and you can watch it, but really the moments that you're like, whoa, is when the concert turns into a theater, it turns into a show, and the music is accentuated by the other elements around it. So that was important too, is being able to actually see and be a part of what you do.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
I'll look forward to my invitation.
If you have any eras tour.
We've already tried.
So, okay.
Yeah, that's next.
I asked if I could give set off the fireworks, and he said I was not a trained professional. I should stick with
I'll
my
go
day job.
backstage. So was there any part of your respective processes that surprised you, that was sort of like any aha moments?
Gosh, so many. I'm trying. I mean, the whole process, right? I really, like Shannon said at the beginning, I didn't know what the end result was going to be, but it was a lot of fun. It brought the team together. It got lots of buy-in, right? So by the time we launched it, there was a large group of people that had been a part of creating it. So there was really, really great buy-in.
There's an interesting dynamic to both of the starts of the work. So both of your businesses were doing very well at the time, but as leaders, you both believed that to achieve step change growth, you needed to do something different. And so that difference was, okay, clarify your offering, really be clear about your customers and where you wanted to go. Both of you had a desire to move from being product providers to being solution providers. And that really took some hard work to lean into figuring out what does it mean to be a solution provider in your industry, and how do you do it, and how do you operationalize it. And I think for you, Lisa, one thing I really admire about the work you did is you made a bold choice to do that right in the middle of COVID. We were all in our basements. We were not together, and it would have been an easy time as a leader to say, we're going to put this on hold because we're in such a time of uncertainty. But you were so clear on, yes, we're in a time of uncertainty. We're going to double down on this. We're going to clarify this so that I know this is going to be over, and when it's over, we'll be ready for it. And I just admire that approach so much, that boldness.
Thank you.
That would add a layer of complexity to it, I would give you that.
I know, I'm listening to you. I get to go to a concert. I'm like, yeah, I mean, we're all virtual. But I think the big aha for me was if you're an organization and you're not, your first question about branding, and you're an organization that doesn't understand branding, you need to understand it. Like, it really is important. And it's creative, and you think it's fluffy and all of that stuff, but it's not. It's actually strategic.
I love that. You think it's creative, but it's actually strategic.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. How was it strategic?
If you know who you are and what you do, and you can articulate it, then it is easy to align that with your strategy. I don't know how, I'm not prepared for that question, but it's easier to put your strategy and your pillars in place because you know who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, because somebody's helped you to articulate that.
Yeah, you could even turn that around. You could say, if you don't know who you are, how's your client going to know who you are?
Yeah,
Right.
that's wonderful, yes. Yeah, I was on a tour of a grocery store, one of our retailers. We're walking down the aisle, like we sell products in all aisles of the grocery store, and he was the vice president. He said, "I don't really fully understand what you do," and I'm like, "Well, hold on, we're getting through some branding," but it was interesting because now I would say folks would have a better understanding. When they understand what you do, it's easier for them to bring business to you because they understand what it is that you're doing for them.
What problems you're solving.
Right, that's it.
So as soon as you can articulate the problems you're solving and the result and the output of solving those problems and what impact it will have on the business and the customer.
Talking about how it impacted your culture, I know that there was a lot of buy-in. I know that it implicated all of your people. I know you went around and explained it to people, but did you get any feedback? Do you see any long-living results of that work in your culture?
Yeah, I'd say when we first started this, we'd actually even done an exercise where you put a bunch of cards on the table, and it's like the brand cards exercise, and what best defines you now, or what do you think of the company, what's reality. There was a huge gap. And what we found by the end of that is like all of those things that were kind of gap elements where, like we're promising this and we're not delivering that. Within kind of like, say, a year or so after, when, we talk to people about, okay, how do you feel about things now, like, are we achieving it? They would pretty uniformly agree that, yeah, like, we're acting in our daily operations, more like what we want to be. Honestly, half the battle was, like you said before, just articulating it.
Right.
Because there wasn't really a frame of reference for them before. It's like, go to work, do your job, come home. Like, there was no real effort to articulate it. Once you set a few simple principles down that are, your brand identity, people start to behave that way, and they understand that they should continue behaving that way.
Right.
So, yeah, we clearly sort of observed that within, not too long after we finished this up.
I got a couple of things to say about that. I would say, from a cultural, but the behavior that you talked about, right? When we refreshed the values, people understand the behaviors that we feel are valuable to be part of the organization. So, hone your expertise, be curious, we're better together. We also added a couple of values that we felt were missing, which was one really about, bringing your whole self to work, being comfortable with that. And, we're here to succeed, one that spoke to results. So I think, by doing the rebranding and the values included in that, people have an understanding of what the expectation is where they may not have before. There's a sense of security because they know what the company, who the company is, what we do, and where we're going. And I think there's a sense of security, safety, I'm probably using the wrong word, but to something like that says, I know what my role is in this organization.
And
I
know
know
how I
what
can
this
do it, yeah.
organization does, and I know how I'm supposed to behave. And if you like all of that, then you know that you're a good fit for the organization. And then the third thing I would say is when you do the rebranding and the new values and stuff, and you create this refresh of your brand, people are excited and they see that they're working for an organization that is trying to help them navigate through change and grow the organization. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. Those are the three things that, I would say helped with the culture. I have to and massive change that, everybody's going through just with, having gone through the pandemic and trying to do resets and, all of the challenges that we see in the world today. You want to know that your workplace is somewhere you can go and feel valued and safe.
The one difference between the processes that we went through was with Pyrotek, you guys are all in from the beginning. We're ready to move forward. Give us everything. We're ready for big change. We want to make a huge wave in the industry. We're ready to go out to all of our stakeholders and customers and really demonstrate we want to do something totally different. Lisa, when we went through the process, and you hinted at it earlier, you were like, well, I'm not sure if we're going to do that part yet. I'm not sure if we're going to do that part yet. And it was more of a step-by-step, but as we demonstrated the impact of the results and we started to go through the process, you got more and more comfortable with that. So now that you look back on that process, do you think that
I must have been a difficult client. That's what I'm thinking.
No. It's just an interesting approach because sometimes you need to step, walk, run.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're jumping into the deep end. And so it really is about understanding where the client's coming from and their appetite
And the comfort
for
level.
that. And the comfort level, yeah.
And the knowledge.
Yeah.
I think now is a good time to actually talk about results. You just mentioned results, and I know that you both alluded to them, but I wanted to know, how do you see the return on this significant investment? Start with you, Scott.
Within 3 years of doing this, we'd effectively doubled our operational scale, both in terms of headcount and facilities. Over that time period, we doubled the size of our Las Vegas operation. We added New York City, we added Nashville, we added Linz, Pennsylvania. Both revenue and operating profit went up 50%. And we made the inside spread of People Magazine.
Say more about the People magazine.
So there's a People Magazine issue floating out there called the Beautiful issue with pink on the inside cover. And if you look to the direct left of it, taking up probably 3/4 of that side of the page is a road case with the very logo and tagline that we spent all that time developing smack dab on it looking at.
It's amazing. And the tagline is?
Bringing live alive.
Very nice. And we discussed before filming that this is obviously cultural capital. We cannot track if there is financial revenue coming from this, but very cool.
Very
But
cool.
So just the financial results that you shared, do you feel like there's a straight line from
Yeah,
the
no,
branding work that you've done?
I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that if we hadn't gone down this road and done this exercise, we would not have achieved that. The team wouldn't have been engaged. There would have been varying levels of the dysfunction they had before, and that those results were like a direct, result of everybody knowing who we were, what we wanted to accomplish, how we were going to get it, what our values are, and how to articulate that to clients.
And did you have any of the same results that Lisa was sharing before, where like a customer called you to say like, oh, you actually look like the kind of brand I want to work with? Like, do you have any stories like that? I don't know how the industry works, but
How that directly helped us is recognizing before we rebranded, the company had been around a long time. It had a reputation, and in a niche category like this, there's a lot of decision makers out there that we've dealt with multiple times over the years. I can think of one particular example where this was a production manager who didn't have a good experience with the company several years before that. And we were able to get them back in the fold through, being very tightly focused on, the fact that we're not just selling widgets. It's not, it's not a flamethrower, it's not a piece of pyro, it's not a laser, it's a full solution. And then having our technicians and project managers actually behave consistently with that. That particular person was able to come back in the fold, and they're still in the fold. That's Katy Perry. We did our first big tour with her right around that time. We just finished a residency with her in Vegas. She's probably doing something again next year, and I can draw a straight line back to that. And it's not that they saw a piece of collateral and phoned us, but the communication with them was able to get reset in a way that favored us.
Just
Yeah.
Katy Perry, no big deal.
I was trying to think of who I was on the phone with today, and it wasn't Katy Perry. But Lisa,
No
let's
problem.
turn to you.
Yeah, I think the question was, what has it done to our results?
Yeah.
Is that really?
Was
Yeah.
it worth the investment?
Was it worth the
Yeah.
investment? Yeah, 100%. What the branding work did was help us to really define who we are, what we do, and what brands we represent. Unique and elevated. Our purpose statement is, we are curators of unique brands bringing elevated food and beverage experiences to Canada. Are you a brand that fits within that? Are you not a brand? So it really helps the team make decisions, business decisions. From a results perspective, we've tripled our profit in the last couple of years. Now, I can't say it's all because of the branding, but the branding certainly played a part in that, and I think gave us some structure and a path on certain things that we should do in order to move the business forward. Return on investment, we have historically, I don't know, my first 3 months within the organization, we had about $20 million worth of brands leave us. I talked to my predecessor, he said, yeah, Lisa, that's churn. That happens in the business. I don't like that churn. I don't like that at all. So now, brands aren't leaving us. They're actually coming. They're coming and they're staying, and we have a strategy of which our branding was a part of that helped us determine, how do we go to market to send that message and to sell that message so that we are able to keep and grow our business. And as a result, we picked up, I think, $30 million worth of business last year. So yes, the branding helped us for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine it helps food brands feel like, oh, we've landed in a safe spot. And like you were
Yes,
saying,
this is
even
a
about-
company that knows what they're doing, and
Yeah.
we do know what we're doing.
A lot of it is about the importance of brand, value proposition design in B2B is really around differentiation. So making sure you really understand why you're different than your competitors, and understanding your purpose, not what you do, but why you do it, right? People need something that they're aspiring to achieve and understand how they contribute to that. It's not just about packing boxes at a warehouse or, lugging bins. It's about a larger purpose and a larger reason to exist. And then the last one is really around customer understanding. I think that the brand process, especially in the B2B world, forces people to really look at their customers and also the other stakeholders that are involved in those buying decisions, because sometimes it's not just the customer that's buying, there's actually a larger stakeholder group. So who are they? What do they care about? Why should they even pay attention to what we're doing? And let's stop talking about us. Let's stop being interested in selling to people, but be interesting for them to want to work with us. And that's a huge shift in the B2B space, and it's a place that's so untapped, because so many organizations, specifically in the B2B world, don't understand the power of branding. And then all of a sudden, and this is why I love my job so much, is you get into this and you unlock this and it's like, what? I didn't even know we could do this. I didn't know this existed. I didn't know that we could be so clear about who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. So I think that that's an exciting place to see people go through that transition.
All right. Well, I think we have one more question. Thank you already for what you have provided to all of us today. But the last question I want to ask is, if you were to share with your peers, fellow business owners or business leaders, the value of brand work in B2B, what would you say?
I would say don't look for immediate results. Go into it understanding that it's a journey. And it's like if you like going on canoe trips down rivers, part of the satisfaction of that is you don't really know what's around the next corner, but you find yourself compelled to get there. If you go in with that mindset, at the end of the journey, your questions will be answered and it will all make sense. But you want to have the discipline and the commitment to stick with it and then actually enjoy it while you're going through it.
I think that's great advice. I would add, if you don't know how to clearly articulate, what your organization does, why they do it, who they are, then you should be looking at doing some corporate branding. And like you indicated, understand that it's a journey. What you think you're going to get at the beginning may be very different at the end, but enjoy that journey because it actually is quite fascinating. And for somebody that never really understood, the fluffy marketing, the creative part of marketing, I can tell you it's not fluffy. It's actually strategic, like I indicated before, and it really will make a difference. And you'll spend a little bit of time doing it, but that time is well spent. Because at the end of it, you're going to have a lot of clarity, and that clarity will allow you to put together, a good strategic plan and a go-forward strategy that will help you grow your business, if that's what your objective is, which it was for us.
Love that. Well answered. And Shannon, what would you tell people if you had to convince someone of the value of B2B brand work? What would you tell them?
I think that we exist in a very crowded space. There is no business that's uniquely positioned to own their customer. Technology's changing, supply chain's changing, customers' needs are changing. And so the value of brand work is that you create your purpose and your vision, and that's not going to change. You really understand who you are. And then by exploring and discovering your points of difference and the value that you offer to customers, that actually uncovers different ways that you can service your customers. It helps you come up with a future plan for product extensions and brand extensions. And so it really is an important way to think about how you position your business strategically right now. But then also, how do you think about what's coming down the pipeline? And then in the future, what do you need to start thinking about? So it's a really important, critical decision filter for decision making. And it also helps you dive a bit deeper into what are your competitors doing? How do you position yourself differently from them? And then also, what do your customers really want from you? and what problems are you solving for them? And I think that when you figure that out, it can be a very powerful force.
I love these answers. Well said. Thank you, all of you, for joining us, and thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on Humanology on Air. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.